Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the 16th session of the Sustainable Insight series. Firstly, I would like to introduce our organizing team from Unesco Jakarta. My name is Khairul Hazlan, Malaysian Funding Trust Coordinator, and we have Felicia Angelina, Gani Mulia, Chitta Yamatusanda, and Martino Raja Bungsu from Unesco Office Jakarta. Today's topic will be on knowledge for inclusive policies for sustainable development. We proudly present Professor Shahbaz, the Director of UNESCO Regional Science Bureau for Asia and the Pacific as the moderator, and one of our guest speaker, Ms. Sharizad Sulaiman, Program Officer of the Malaysian National Commission for UNESCO. And we were going to expect another guest speaker, Professor Camkin, Adjunct Professor at the University of Western Australia's Institute of Agriculture and the International Water Centre, Griffith University, Australia. Prof. Camkin is on the way. He's having some technical difficulties. So maybe while waiting for him, we can start this session now.
Thank you very much, dear Hazlan. So I invite you to be a part of our discussion as well with Sharizad. And so happy to see Sharizad after some time. Sharizad has played a very important role for this Malaysia UNESCO cooperation program as the coordinator. And now she's working in the National Commission. And Hazlan is the present coordinator, also coming from the Ministry of Education in Malaysia. So to both of you, you have played a very important role. Just to make sure we understand the perspective of today. Today, we are not going to speak about the position of the government of Malaysia or the position of UNESCO. We want to really understand what have we learned together. So I see now Professor Camkin has also joined, but I would like still, Hazlan, you should be part of our discussion. I would like to pose one question to you. Okay. To begin with, most welcome, dear Jeff. We are talking about you. And today, while we were waiting for you, we have invited also Hazlan to join our discussion, because you know Hazlan very well and you know Sharizad also, and we know you. And there are many people who have joined us knowing you are coming. So if I can start with Sharizad. Dear Sharizad, can you please give us your involvement and engagement with the program? When did you start? And what was the real key highlight as you were working with this Malaysia UNESCO cooperation program? Dear Sharizad.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Shahbaz. It has been quite some time since I see you. It's glad to actually finally see you face to face, virtually. Although the program started earlier than that, but during my 3-year period as the MFIT coordinator, one of the highlights would be to assist UNESCO in organizing the first roundtable, MUCP roundtable at the sidelines of the 2015 General Conference in Paris. There we managed to gather quite a large number of audience with the help of our permanent delegate in UNESCO, as well as the UNESCO office in headquarters and nation embassies. We managed to, although it was pretty new, but we managed to gather a few those involved in the project, experts involved in the projects, for instance, in the area of culture, in the area of engineering, also Malaysian experts from ISTIC, I think, as well as also from the Academy of Sciences Malaysia as panelists. And basically from that, that particular roundtable was very important because it managed to, we somehow managed to gather quite a number of audience from Africa, and they showed interest in Malaysia UNESCO program.
Thank you, dear Sharizad. I remember we were together there, and several ministers, including His Excellency the Minister of Education of Malaysia, was there. It's a general conference, a very big gathering where ministers from the member states come, the permanent delegates are there, national commissioners are there. There was a lot of excitement in the room about Malaysia UNESCO cooperation program. What do you think is the reason for this excitement from those participants? If you can quickly mention the reason for
Yes.
the
Probably, in my opinion, I think the MUCP may be a unique program for to be introduced, to be launched, because it basically covers all five competencies of UNESCO, and it also encompasses the areas of Asia Pacific and Africa, focusing on least developed countries and small island developing states. So probably these are, and it also basically encourage and the focus is actually because of South-South cooperation. So this would be the idea of which could the idea which was able to gain interest of this the member states. And basically, it would enable a win-win situation between the beneficiaries as well as the donor through South-South cooperation. That is the exchanging of knowledge.
So that's really wonderful to get your insights. So the excitement in the room was because it's a very comprehensive program.
Yeah.
It goes across the mandate of UNESCO: education, science, culture, communication, information, social and human sciences, as well as it goes across regions, Asia Pacific, of course, with the Pacific, the SIDS are important. And then it also linked with Africa. And because it was easy to understand, the South-South cooperation, very unique. So there are so many things unique about this program. So thank you, dear Sharizad, for starting the discussion. Before I go to Hazlan, let me now ask the same question to Jeff. Jeff, can you please explain to us how did you get engaged with this program, and what are the key things which you can share with us? You have a lot of experience in policy as a professor, and you have worked across many programs, including working across the regions, which has been highlighted by Sharizad. The program is about regions and the cooperation. So, dear Jeff, welcome, and please give your perspective. What makes this program unique, and what did you learn, and how did you get involved?
Yeah, look, thanks very much, and apologize, Shahbaz, and to all the attendees and panelists for being late. My aging computer decided now was a good time to completely shut down. So one thing I've learned from the coronavirus pandemic is I need to buy a new computer.
I agree with you. I agree with you that we need a lot more equipment than ever before. But no apologies. We have kept people entertained. It's
Good
your time.
I knew you would. Thank you. Yeah, look, MUCP is a really fantastic program, and it's been one of the top three research associated work experiences of my life. The other ones being involved slightly in an 11-year integrated catchment management program in New Zealand, led by Andrew Fenimore from Landcare Research, and the Northern Australia Irrigation Futures Project, which you know well, Shahbaz, led by Dr. Keith Bristow from CSIRO and the CRC for Irrigation Futures. And whilst MUCP is completely unique in my understanding of the breadth of the expertise that it engaged, it has some interesting characteristics that were similar to those other two projects. And one of them for me, and we'll come back to this theme several times through the question and answers, is the way that it really connected people. And it did that in a way right across the regions of Asia, Pacific, Africa, even bringing in some people from Europe and elsewhere. But it also did that connecting community stakeholders with policymakers, with researchers, and joining together to solve problems. And for me, it's that focus on the challenges and bringing together to the table whatever experiences and knowledge and skills we can get hold of to help deal with these problems. That's the strength of MUCP. And And that was demonstrated, through 36 projects with nearly 7,000 people all around the world. So it's very exciting, the personal stories that we heard, and again, we'll come back to some of that.
No, thank you very much. So really, that's the ability of the program to bring people and, of course, bring nations together. And thank you for mentioning Andrew Fenimore from our Hydrology for Environment, Life and Policy program, and of course, Keith Christo with the Northern Irrigation Future. So these are our friends over time. And if we really think about the HELP program, Hydrology for Environment, Life and Policy, the CRC Irrigation Futures and Northern Futures, they were about sustainability. And you played a very important role with them. And MUCP is playing a role at a bigger stage for the world for sustainability with the Sustainable Development Goals through South-South cooperation. So I think it's a continuity, and your highlights and your understanding really helps us think that linking people, linking countries, bringing ideas to the next level and bringing to the policy level how this continuum goes. And let's continue to explore it a bit further. Let me now turn to Hazlan. Hazlan, you took over from Sharizad. Very difficult job, honestly, because many projects, as you have mentioned before also, and Jeff mentioned, 36 projects. What is the highlight for you in terms of when did you start working on it, and what's the highlight for you for this particular program?
Okay, I started working replacing Sharizad in 2018, and in my opinion, my view, the highlight would be the 2019 roundtable discussion. Sharizad organized the first roundtable where most of the projects are being implemented, while I was at most of the projects during my time have been completed. And at that time, we have the satisfaction of presenting the tools, the outcome, the lessons, the findings from the experts to the people. And it's very delightful to hear feedback from the attendees, participants during the general conference, especially representatives from the African countries, where some of the respondents mentioned they have joined the MFIT projects before. So this is for me where we receive a feedback, then we can evaluate on the next step, how to better improvise way forward. And to continue on what Sharizad and Prof. Camkin have mentioned, connecting people, the 5 competencies. MCP, in my point of view, is unique because it covers all competencies, and it's also being cross-sectoral. Some of the projects are combining 2 major disciplines, such as climate change on journalism, education on climate change awareness, and it's bring a sense of inclusiveness as mentioned by Prof. Camkin. It involves the whole stakeholders, relevant stakeholders. We are using the quadruple helix, the policymakers, academicians, NGOs, the people, and private sectors. So for me, it brings a sense of inclusiveness. It connects the people, as mentioned by Prof. Camkin, and it also creates a networking between the experts, which from the feedback I received, they were really enjoying the networking.
So that's really very interesting insight, dear Hazlan. Thank you very much. That in your view, it's about inclusiveness, which is our topic today. Being inclusive means leaving no one behind. And as Jeff has said, more than 7,000 experts connect in different countries. But also very importantly, it's between disciplines, interdisciplinary. And that interdisciplinary approach bringing, you gave very interesting example of climate change and journalism. How the journalists report climate related information in a responsible way. So I will come back to you, Hazlan. Thank you for your insight. So now, dear colleagues, we have 3 insights. And one insight certainly from Sharizad has given us an idea. The excitement on the sidelines of General Conference of Unesco with the member states was that this is perhaps a very unique program, which brings all the different areas of competence of UNESCO. It brings South-South cooperation. It gives practical examples. And there was a lot of expectation. And as Hazlan has just mentioned, there were then, after 4 years, when we went back to the sidelines of the general conference, we heard many good stories from colleagues from Africa. Dear Jeff, you have synthesized many interesting large-scale programs. One of them is, of course, the CRC for Irrigation Futures. And there was a program, what we used to call sustainability. And there you helped write the sustainability story. We also have a sustainability science program, and I requested you to write a sustainability a story within this particular program. Can you please give us an idea that how such kind of knowledge, which is about inclusiveness, which is about sustainability together, which is about bringing natural and social sciences together, how this can be taken to the next level, and what you gathered while you went through the sustainability science kind of initiative. Dear Jeff, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, that's one of the projects I worked on for MUCP, and sustainability science, looking at 5 demonstration sites in Southeast Asia, and it was a really fantastic piece of work done in those countries. Now there were 2 cases in Malaysia, Philippines, Cambodia, and I forget the other one at the moment. But the core to all of it, and there's a book that tells the story of these.
The other one was in Indonesia. We had Professor Helmi recently with us.
Indonesia, yes.
Yeah.
And you know, what was clear in every case was the importance of, again, getting together those community stakeholders, civil society, the policymakers, and the researchers right at the beginning to understand the problem, to work with each other's languages and the way each other talks about issues, and to spend time to understand the problem that they are trying to solve. And that provides the platform for then thinking about, well, what kind of future are we really looking for? And then attempting to develop a vision of the future that they can all align with and all fight for together. And it was clear that that process, and it goes through the normal processes of forming and storming and developing the ideas, but that process of understanding the problem from each person's perspective is critical to be able to develop a vision for the future that can be supported by everybody. And then it's about, okay, well, how do we get to that vision? What are the steps we need to take? What are the paths that we can try? And if they don't work, how do we adapt to another path? And communication is obviously a very clearly integral part of that entire process, of keep that momentum of the connectivity between the various stakeholders, and keep that connectivity going so that when there are issues, they can go back and talk about the issues together and move forward on a new path. It's those sort of messages that came through really strongly through this these sustainable science demonstration sites.
Yeah, no, this is really very interesting what you have described with the sustainability sites. By the way, those were either UNESCO geoparks like Langkawi, for example, or UNESCO heritage sites, which we have like in Cambodia. So we have been working on those very important sites, which have a lot to do with the local stakeholders, and also from the health program as the Langat River Basin in Malaysia. So that's very interesting, that there has to be a basis, which is the vision of all stakeholders, and then trying to understand the role of the science, the natural and the social and the other disciplines, and then looking into how do we develop the common future or scenarios together. So that's also the experience from the Burdekin, the northern part of Australia, and the northern irrigation futures which go beyond Burdekin into northern Australia. So maybe, Jeff, I would like to come back to you in a moment after I ask a question to Sharizad uh, about the policy, because you have worked in the government, you have worked also in CSRO in Australia, and you have been a professor, and you have helped us with the initiative in UNESCO. So I would like to explore a bit more. How can we really empower uh, the knowledge to come to help communities? So let's continue now with Sharizad. Sharizad, one of the most interesting things in my view, in my own personal experience, has been the link with people, as you said before, but also with Malaysian stakeholders, creating excitement about UNESCO programs. There is Hari Malaysia,
UNESCO Malaysia.
UNESCO, yeah, Hari UNESCO Malaysia. Can you please tell us a bit more about the engagement of the Malaysian stakeholders, and also tell us about this Hari UNESCO Malaysia a little bit more? That would be of interest to people because we use that as an opportunity to also showcase some of the results.
True. Can I just start with Hari UNESCO Malaysia first? Okay.
Yes, please do so.
Hari UNESCO Malaysia was basically launched to celebrate and also to inform the communities, the Malaysians, with regards to Malaysia's involvement in UNESCO. So basically, it highlights initially during the first stage, during its inauguration, it highlighted the awardees or those who have received awards from UNESCO through like prizes or through I can't recall the names of the awards, but they basically received and for instance, like for women in science or
Women in
whatnot. For
science
example,
with the
yes,
L'Oreal, there is award. There is
L'Oreal,
also
and
award
some
for
of the awards
ESG.
which some of our academicians did receive, but I can't recall the names of them all. But basically, the main aim was to create awareness about UNESCO and Malaysia's involvement in UNESCO to all walks of life, through to students, to universities, university students, as well as to the community at large. And during that time, I think it was also a good opportunity to also. I'm not so sure if they've already exhibited any MUCP exhibitions during the Hari UNESCO Malaysia, but that would be I think that would be an important event for Malaysia to explore, to share the outcomes of the MUCP projects, especially when we have the Malaysian experts right here in Malaysia.
Yeah, and if I can follow up, it was not so easy to engage with Malaysian experts at the start of the program. How did we pick up the momentum? What do you think are the barriers for the engagement, and what are the benefits as well for them?
Okay. Initially, probably the difficulties or the challenges to engage Malaysian experts was that the involvement of Malaysian, in my opinion, the involvement of Malaysian was maybe a little bit. It was not as much, compared to currently, because they weren't probably they were not aware and they do not how to approach UNESCO. But through the two Category 2 centers we have in which is hosted in Malaysia. One would be ISTIC and one is HTC KL. I guess those two Category 2 centers, the networks we have, basically help in engaging Malaysian universities, especially in the field of sciences. But the rest, it would be we have to go through the ministries or universities who would be maybe interested in participating in or engaging in or helping implement the projects.
Yeah. So it slowly began, but it certainly gained momentum. And our existing UNESCO centers, especially in the area of natural sciences, one is about water, the Human Tropic Center,
Yes.
and with the Department of Irrigation and Drainage, and the other one under the Ministry of Science and Technology, ISTIC for South-South cooperation. So that was a good start, but certainly we needed to engage with many more stakeholders and for them to know about UNESCO. So Hari, UNESCO Malaysia helped create awareness among people about UNESCO's programs and Malaysia's role. And then Category 2 centers helped us link. But in the long run, we had many, many more things to contribute from many universities. So I will come back to you, dear Sharizad. Let me go back to Jeff now. Dear Jeff, with your knowledge of synthesis of various aspects of the program, can you please help us understand the link with the policy a bit more? What is your view? How can we bring this knowledge to policy? Like in Northern Australia, the challenge is how do we use water in a more sustainable way for creating local opportunities. But here we have knowledge from many different areas about inclusive policies, like about climate change, for example, about managing a site, for example, managing disasters, for example. How can we use this knowledge to the next level?
I think in some ways it comes back to empowerment and the release of knowledge. I recall in this project, in MUCP and in Northern Australia Irrigation Futures project, for example, everywhere we went, we heard stories of people being frustrated that the knowledge they have is not being utilized. Or wasn't being utilized in the past. And that can be because of the historic dominance of a particular scientific discipline. It might be because policymakers and researchers are not talking the same language and having trouble to communicate. It might be that the science is not valued. It might be that the community stakeholders don't value the science. You know, all of these weaknesses in the chain can result in a lack of utilization of the knowledge that is available. So for mine, one of the things that comes out of MUCP and the other projects is finding ways to release the knowledge that is held by everybody. So acknowledging that the knowledge held by the fisherman or the farmer or the forester is absolutely of as equal value as that which is generated by scientific research. And what we need to do to have good policy is the ability to connect all that information, all that knowledge that we have available, and to develop the wisdom to use all that knowledge to solve challenges that we haven't faced before. And that's what wisdom is about, the ability to deal with things we haven't dealt before by adapting and utilizing knowledge and interpreting how to apply that to new situations. And it seems to me that we can't do that if we don't lose our ego and accept and encourage everybody to bring their knowledge to the table. And that's what MUCP did in many ways in all of these projects around the various regions. It encouraged the community stakeholders, it encouraged the policymakers, it encouraged the scientists of many, many different disciplines to sit down together and to focus on the challenge and the vision for the future and work together without ego on how do you get there. And for me, that's the core. That's the key to it. I'm not hearing you, Shahbaz.
Sorry, now should be better. Dear Jeff, thank you for explaining all that process from data to wisdom and for people to be able to share. So, in your opinion, does South-South cooperation help us move to the level of confidence when we are talking across boundaries between nations? So, South-South cooperation, how do you see it helps us move us forward for an inclusive world which is able to share knowledge and wisdom?
Right. Well, South-South cooperation and indeed triangular cooperation is all about that. It's about collaborating and sharing knowledge, sharing skills, sharing experiences, good and bad. And MUCP is a great example of South-South cooperation towards the 2030 Sustainable Agenda and the SDGs. There's a lot of numbers that tell part of the story. The 7,000 people involved across all the regions. Participants from 87 countries have benefited from MUCP, 79 of which are in the Global South, 79% of which. 28 of the 30 major implementation partner countries were from the Global South working together, including 10 least developed countries. 59% of the world's small island developing states and 30% of the least developed countries have benefited from being involved in MUCP. And there were 15 UNESCO offices, centers and other forms of UNESCO offices in Pacific, Africa, Asia and Europe involved in MUCP. So it's a great example of a whole range of different organizations and individuals working together. But those numbers just tell part of the story. I had the pleasure of synthesizing participating in and synthesizing the discussions at the MUCP expert synthesis meetings in Penang and Langkawi, and we heard many personal stories about empowerment and about personal growth of the people involved, from the people involved in MUCP. Those stories were of individuals who felt empowered to share their challenges, to explore solutions and celebrate success with colleagues from near and far addressing similar problems. We heard from community stakeholders, research and policymakers who were empowered to work together, beginning with that shared experience and developing their understanding of the challenges and visions for the future. They felt empowered to work together. And we've already heard from Ms. Sharizad about the institutions in Malaysia, and in particular, but elsewhere as well, who felt empowered to develop their people and to build their capacity to contribute beyond their own borders towards the sustainable development goals and towards the benefits of the other nations. And so MUCP has empowered South-South cooperation in across engineering, education, technology, human sciences, culture, communications and information, in liaison with Malaysian institutions in particular, and a whole range of experts around all of these regions. It really has empowered people and institutions and nations.
So that's really very interesting insight. Thank you for your very insightful numbers. I'm sure it is exciting young people. There are colleagues who are putting questions. Please continue to do so. They are also addressed to, of course, Professor Camkin. Today we are keeping it at the synthesis and the inclusiveness of knowledge and how do we become policy ready. If you are a student listening and you will be able to answer the survey, we will be happy to give you a certificate of learning and from today's session's participation. So thank you, dear Jeff. This is very important. Let me come now to our dear colleague Sharizad. Working in UNESCO must be interesting for you, Sharizad, to learn about all these sectors. Usually people work in one particular area, like in sciences or education or culture. While you were doing this coordination role, you have to bring different areas together, actively link with the program specialists, our different stakeholders, as well as with different UNESCO institutes. So can you please give us an idea how you managed to link with these stakeholders, and in your view, how did you find the South-South cooperation emerging through the program?
Okay, so basically my job was also involving in communication between all the respective UNESCO offices as far as APIA in the Pacific to also in the headquarters in Paris. Basically, most of this communication are done either via Skype or email, and it's quite a learning experience for me because it's quite wide, and it also covers not only on the subject matter itself, it also covers on in terms of budget and management. As for what was your question again, Dr. Shahbaz? Sorry.
What did you learn about South-South cooperation while you work with all these different players across different countries?
Okay, what I learned from South-South cooperation is that basically knowledge is very important, and sharing of knowledge with the respective partners is very much, whether it's technical or capacity building or whatsoever, it is basically an important aspect in South-South cooperation, sharing of information across borders to the masses for the benefit of the country, also for benefiting of the beneficiary country as well as for the country, for Malaysia itself or the targeted countries. And basically you could see and hope that solutions would emerge, and the projects could be adapted or maybe replicated in the beneficiary countries. For instance, project on STEM for girls. Probably there would be some changes in terms of the policy, and so there'll be more girls, in the curricula, more girls basically interested in STEM education, or probably there will be more interest in engineering. So there will be like some development in terms of the policy making, and also through South-South cooperation, one of the other main important elements would be the engagement between the experts, and hopefully it could be sustained through this networking, as well as through MUCP and through South-South cooperation. It would basically help promote sustainable developments and in the end contribute to attaining or achieving the sustainable development goals.
Dear Sharizad. Hello.
Yes.
Okay. So I missed the last part.
The last part would be through MUCP and also through South-South cooperation, we would hope to see the projects would be able to promote sustainable developments and contribute to the achieving and attainment of sustainable development goals.
So basically, these projects are contributing. You did a mapping, dear Sharizad, you remember, a long time ago. Mapping of every project, how it contributes to a given sustainable development goal. Can you just give a quick idea? What does that mapping meant, and how do you actually convey such mapping to the steering committee who was interested to know how these projects contribute to SDGs?
Oh God, so long ago. Okay. When we did the mapping, basically we looked at the areas of attainment and the areas where, for instance, where the targeted areas which are related to the sustainable development goals, and we could see that basically most of the projects would be contributing to of course, SDG 17, which is
international cooperation here.
Yes, international cooperation, but the MUCP project itself, I mean, like, I think it's SDGs and MUCP projects itself. If you try to relate it, look at it in general, you could see that most of the projects are basically projects related to sciences and education. So you could see that the projects for education, most of the projects will be focused to SDG 4, whereas science, it could be related to probably water, SDG 6. Oh, no, no,
You
sorry.
remember it very well. I asked you a tough question. You know me
I
sometimes.
can. So, yeah, so through the projects, we could basically map and see what are the SDGs, which SDGs are really related to the particular projects based on the competencies as well, and the main how do you say, the main focus of the particular
The
project.
main outputs and outcomes.
Yes,
There are many
also,
colleagues today from Davao as well, and they're asking questions,
yes.
And you remember they developed an SDG scorecard. And
Yes,
that's
true.
what,
And I would like to share that actually here at the UNESCO Malaysian National Commission, we are also using the SDG scorecard for
Very
our
good.
for one of our projects. So actually, it shows that it is a successful how do you say initiative and outcome from the particular project. Is it APFAS? I can't recall which
APFAS,
project.
yes. Your memory is very good. And this is not a question I was going to ask you, but you have answered already. So that's wonderful.
Okay.
So thank you for your insight. So basically, every project is contributing to the goal of the SDGs.
Yeah.
Of course, SDG number 17, which promotes international cooperation, collaboration, and it's a means of implementation for the other SDGs. But very strongly, SDG number 4, which is about education, quality
Education, yes.
yeah,
Quality
and
education.
SDG number 6, which is about water and sanitation, water security, very, very strongly. About sustainable cities, SDG number 11, because we have many projects related to culture and cities. And similarly, there are other SDGs which are also part of the discussion, but also very importantly, SDG number 16, which is about governance. And that brings the work related to climate reporting and social and human sciences and inclusiveness. But of course, very importantly, there are colleagues who are listening to us. We have been also focusing on gender, SDG number 5, as Sharizad has just mentioned. So if you want to learn more about this SDGs and UNESCO's program, Sharizad collated many reports which are available on our MUCP website. That was the reason to bring you to this question. And if you want to learn about what it means to work in UNESCO, please also our colleagues can share some ideas, including Sharizad and Hazlan. Let me now come to Jeff. So Jeff, as I asked a tough question to Sharizad, let me come to you. I always admire your work. You have worked in government where people have to make decisions with limited information and with many political consideration. And now with COVID, we know there may be very limited data, but people have to do things very fast. So I'm sure our audience would be interested to know from you with a particular example. You went to Langkawi, where we had this synthesis meeting. Langkawi is an island which is a global geopark, and there has been many studies on sustainability, and one of them, of course, about Langkawi. The question I want to really take from where you have said from data to information to knowledge to wisdom. How do we continue to build and how do we engage with the policymakers, the government, the political parties, the different stakeholders? What it would mean to them? If I say MUCP to anyone on the street, they will have no idea. How do we bring this knowledge in the proper format? So that's my first question. Then I have a follow-up question. How do you start that engagement process that we start improving the policies to become more inclusive? Dear Jeff, your insight, people really like your insights from that angle working from different perspectives?
Okay, great. A really interesting question. I had the pleasure of working as a ministerial advisor for agriculture and fisheries and environment and water resources at different times. And it was probably the most formative experiences of my career. And the reason being is that in the end, it's the policymakers that are going to make the big decisions. And we make our daily decisions framed by the policies that others are setting. And what I got to understand was a bit more about the world of the policymaker. I got to understand that they're human. I got to understand that we shouldn't be scared of them. That
Oh, really?
they are just people who go about their daily business like everybody else and happen to have a job that is making policy. And they have weaknesses and strengths. They have knowledge and areas where they lack knowledge. And like everybody else, they're looking for their life to be a little bit easier. So for me, one of the things that was absolutely clear was if we want to help make good policy, that we need to understand the world of the policymaker in the same way as researchers often say we need to understand the way fishermen think or the way farmers think or the way miners think so that we can help develop good science. We need to understand the way policymakers think to be able to help develop good policy. When I was in fisheries management, I had the good fortune of an agreement with my CEO at the New South Wales Department of Fisheries to spend 25% of my time either talking with fishermen or talking with policymakers. And I would travel to do that. And it was really important to gain these insights from the people involved in this part of the decision-making process. So for me, walking in their shoes as close as possible, understanding, sharing understanding of the world and the lens through which the other people see things, the policymakers or the community stakeholders, the farmers, the fishermen, whoever. Whatever you can do to develop your understanding of their world and how they see things will help to develop good policy and help to develop good science, help to develop good communication skills, and help each of us put in front of policymakers opportunities for making better policy.
That's really very insightful. I have a last question. Time flies. We have almost come to the end of our today's engagement. My last question, which will be in a different form to both of you. Dear Jeff, you have given ideas that there is a lot of knowledge which is ready, which can be synthesized. We should not be scared about any of the policy related people. They are also people and they need this knowledge. If we are asked this question by the people who make investments into such programs as Malaysia UNESCO cooperation program, how should we show the value of the program? Should we say return on investment as an economist, how much it will be if we invest so many dollars into this area and what we will get? Or what can be the other ways we can value such a program? There may be many things which are, as we say, intangible. Can you give us an idea? How do we value such a program which is promoting South-South cooperation and which is helping bring the knowledge for sustainability and inclusive policies?
I guess there's two parts to this. One is, okay, there are investors and they have objectives with their investment. So we need to be able to respond to their initial lens, their initial sense of what their objectives are. And often those objectives can be a little narrow. It can be, okay, how much did this investment turn into economic activity? Yeah, okay, we need to be able to respond as best we can to that question. But we also need to be able to develop their understanding that that is only a small part of the story. It is only a small benefit compared to the larger benefits that have come. And MUCP is a classic example of that. You know, yes, there are demonstrable benefits in terms of the generation of funding towards research projects that came from other sources than Malaysia. Malaysia provided a substantial contribution to MUCP through MFIT. That brought in other funding, but it created enormous benefits for Malaysia and for its neighbours and globally, and for its institutions and for its people. We heard in the synthesis sessions frequent commentary about how well Malaysia was seen for having invested in this program that is supporting not only themselves but their neighbours and other people around the world in other regions. We heard that from the participants in the program. We heard from the researchers and stakeholders in MUCP how they'd grown through the program, how they now saw their role as researchers differently, and how they saw the importance of this connectivity between the community, research and policymakers, and that had changed the way they now think about their job. We saw the growth in Malaysian institutions. That means that it's no longer difficult to find partners for this type of program, and the staff within those institutions are being increasingly asked to participate in collaborations throughout the world, opening up enormous opportunities for those individuals, those institutions and Malaysia to share its knowledge and to bring back knowledge from other regions. And in that way, the money that Malaysia and its people invested in MUCP has created benefits that have rippled all the way out through the Pacific and Africa and Asia and elsewhere, but have also brought back knowledge and skills and growth that means Malaysia is now in a better position to do what it needs to do as well.
That's really very wonderful insight. That is, of course, we must be aware of what the policymakers would like to see, which may be the return on investment, very important question, but also a lot of other benefits, and from the individual level all the way to the levels of the policy. So thank you, dear Jeff. Dear Sharizad, if you want to give us one message as an individual who have witnessed such a phenomenal program, what would you like to share with us as an insight, which as a personal level, you would say is something which has become a kind of highlight for yourself from bringing the inclusive policy related knowledge?
Okay, I would have to say that personally, I've seen the growth of Malaysian institutions involving in or engaging with UNESCO networks in UNESCO projects, and at the same time, they were able to actually expand their networking to as far as Africa, which is also one of the main objective of the South-South cooperation through MUCP. Basically, they would be able to be responsive to the needs and priorities of the specific target countries, utilizing the experts, and as I said, creating the network. And in the end, it would basically help to promote sustainable development.
Thank you very much, dear Sharizad. So there are benefits for the individuals, for them to learn what's going on in the bigger world, in their areas of expertise, and then also for the institutions, like the institutions in Malaysia, they start understanding, they're enhancing understanding to how can they play a bigger role as a very important country, Malaysia, as it's growing and its influence is becoming bigger, how it can provide new opportunities for all those institutions to link. And of course, UNESCO Category 2 centers, UNESCO chairs, but in general, the cooperation which became available. So thank you for that insight, the growth of the individual as well as the grooming, I would say, of the institution.
The institutions, yes.
Yeah. So any last words would you like to say, Jeff, today?
Yes, thank you. Firstly, a really enjoyable session. Thank you for the opportunity to participate. Nice to see you and Sharizad again. I guess I would like to just finish on one note, and that is that the hard work's already been done with MUCP. The hard work is getting the large-scale programs together. It takes time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes fantastic leadership, which Shahbaz, you have done as always, and congratulations to you and your team at Unesco. And you've got it together. It's up and running. It's got networks all around the world. You know, I'm talking with 2 organisations in Nigeria about how to use some work done in MUCP to help build community water education. You know, that wouldn't have happened without MUCP. So the hard work's done. There's an opportunity to get more from the investment that was made with perhaps less investment going into the future, to just keep that network going, keep the level of interest up, keep the learning, keep the sharing happening, and even greater benefits will come from MUCP. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So with that, we come to the end. I would like to thank again from the deepest of my heart both Sharizad and Professor Jeff Camkin. Sharizad, you are an amazing colleague. You have done a wonderful job with this program and with the excellent coordination and bringing synthesis together. And Jeff, you are an amazing colleague for many, many years. The sharing of the journey with the health program and with the CRC irrigation, and sharing of your insights from the government to the academia, and now with multiple organizations. So let me try to summarize in 2-3 minutes so that we can bring it to the attention of those people who have less time. Knowledge for inclusive policies have to be built through an inclusive process, from data to information to knowledge, and then of course to wisdom where we can deal with different situations. Malaysia UNESCO cooperation program is very unique, as Sharizad, Haslan, and Jeff have mentioned. It brings all the different areas of competence of UNESCO: education, natural sciences, also culture, communication and information, and social and human sciences. It brings transdisciplinary approaches. It helps us bring South-South cooperation within Asia and Pacific and across Asia Pacific and Africa. There are already many good examples where the knowledge is already there. As Jeff says, the hard yards have been done, the data has been collected, the groundwork has been done. We need to take the next steps and bring this knowledge to the attention of those people who need it. As Jeff says, we should not be afraid of the people working in the policy arena. We need to understand their needs to supply this data, information, and right up to the knowledge which is leading to better wisdom. For that, we need to actively engage with those people who need to make these tough decisions. So many of those products are now available, which were synthesized by Sharizad, Professor Camkin, as well as by Haslan. One of the very valuable work which Sharizad started was how each one of these projects contributes to a given SDG. Why SDGs? Because SDGs are about leaving no one behind and giving opportunities to people, such as there should be no hunger. The health should be for everyone. Like in COVID time, we have learned the health is the most important part of our life. Water security, the securities which are needed for the environment, the climate change initiatives which have been discussed today for SDG number 13, very important. Governance, SDG number 16, and very importantly, how do we bring international collaboration together? That's all part of being inclusive. There is a lot of body of knowledge which is available now. Those reports which have been produced by Professor Camkin and by Sharizad and Hazlan. They are available on our MUCP website. There are simple ways to understand how every project can contribute to SDGs. SDG scorecard is one example, which is also available through our website. As Sharizad mentioned, the real success is it is being used and it is useful. So those kind of ideas are there. We are also actively promoting the role of girls and women, and STEM for girls, very important area, but there are many other areas like engineering capacity building, the areas related to sustainability science, areas related to climate change reporting and the related policies. Also, very importantly, we have an inclusive policy lab, which is under our social and human sciences program. You can go online and understand how to use that at the level of an individual, at the level of a university or research organization, or at the level of a ministry. So there are many of those tools available, which we will be bringing to the attention of colleagues, the governments, as well as stakeholders who may be interested to build on top of that. Can you be part of it? Certainly. First of all, look into what has been done already. How can you build your knowledge on top of that? If you're interested in the areas of policy and policy related research, maybe there are many findings from these 36 projects which you can build on. With that, we thank you all for all your questions. We will be answering them as usual at an individual level, and we will put them on our MUCP Facebook. Those colleagues who have joined from Facebook Live, welcome. Thank you. Put also your comments on Facebook Live. And if you want to get certificate, Hazlan will tell you. And dear Hazlan, thank you for standing in for Jeff. Over to you, Hazlan.
Thank you, Professor Shahbaz, Professor Camkin, and Ms. Sharizad. Dear participants, thank you for your participation, and please be reminded to fill the attendance list through the link at the chat box and Facebook if you wish to receive certificates. We keep this form open 60 minutes from now on. Our next Sustainable Insight event will be on Thursday, 24th September, and the discussion will be on pathways for realizing water security across borders. For further information, please visit our Sustainable Insight Facebook page and Instagram. Thank you. We wish you a good day, stay safe, and see you all soon tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, Sharizad, Hazlan, and all colleagues who have joined us.